Good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Good morning. I'm Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Welcome to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television.
Well, the full team is back, right? Welcome to the nation's capital, Abuja. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
You know, I was waiting for Kayode to start because he loves this thing about welcome to the commercial territory. Or commercial, what do you used to say that
Commercial capital. You don't have to rub it in. Yes, I'm in Abuja.
He's stuck here with me in Abuja for now, so let us see how he does that. Good morning and welcome, Maokwe Ogunyusu.
Don't worry, I'll be fine, I'll be fine. Well, we're starting off here in the nation's capital this morning. We have Mr. Igo Akaria with us, who is a former bureau chief at The Guardian, is a bureau chief This Nigeria, and a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Joins us for the newspaper review this morning. It's good to have you and to see you in person.
Yeah, good morning.
Well, let's start off with The Guardian.
I haven't seen your face physically, but I'm doing that now.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, I mean, quite a lot on the front pages. And I'll start with The Guardian, which you're familiar with. And this is how The Guardian leads this morning. Jonathan absent as APC screens presidential aspirant. So it looks like, you know, let me just take the writers first. Let me not rush into it. Screening panel asked to disqualify Tinubu over Chicago affair. Supporters in rousing welcome for Tinubu at venue. Bakari Onenye pledged to abide by party position. Fallout of Atiku's emergence. APC chieftains weigh Oshimbajo others' chances. Atiku intensifies reconciliation with Wike, other stakeholders. Obi picks Labour Party's presidential ticket. So The Guardian may have led with the APC screening, but clearly takes a look at what's going on in other parties, PDP and Labour Party. I'm just wondering, off the back of the primaries we saw over the weekend, and now what we're seeing, the screening in the APC, what we saw in Labour Party as well, as a journalist, how are you soaking all of this in?
Well, these are interesting times for Nigeria as a country, and it would appear as if we are going through a comic circus, you know.
Comic circus?
Yeah.
Why?
It doesn't appear as if the political class, the politicians themselves, for them, it's business as usual. The usual horse trading, backstabbing, betrayals, and all of that. That's just what we can see. But as journalists, we are to interrogate all of the conversations around the same individuals. That is really what worries me. If we are talking about moving our nation forward away from the past, trying to break from what used to be the normal, the normal as it were, I'm very worried. You could just see that the APC and the PDP still remains the dominant political parties. And if some of the individuals that whose names are being bandied around, who have also picked the expression of interest from and are actually running for the #1 position, the presidency, a couple of them have not been consistent ideologically. They are very politically flirtatious. They move around the political parties once they can't get their, what they want from the parties, yes, then they just move on. So for me, I'm worried about that. Yes.
I mean, we hear a lot that really the parties don't have any distinct ideology. In fact, some will go as far as saying APC and PDP, they're one and the same. So is it like they don't have an ideology, or essentially they just want the ticket anyway, and seeing that looks like both divides are the same, they just cross anyhow?
If the political parties don't have ideology, what about the individuals? What do they believe in? Do they really believe in Nigeria? Do they believe in the Nigeria project? And all that. Look at what happened at the PDP primaries, the dollarization, not even nairalization as it were. So it would appear as if the naira is no longer of significant value. So it is the dollar, and it is so much of dollar. It's the dollar reign. Well, a lot of the delegates. For me, that's discouraging. And as journalists who I was at the venue, though I didn't get in, I have my reporters in there. And
Did they tell you they saw the dollars? Did they see the dollars?
They will never see the dollars.
That's the interesting part.
How does it fly around then? How do they do these things?
Nobody sees the dollar. Huh? No, they have a way of, the politicians have a way of always, politicians have a way of always doing these things, you know, and they are like thieves at night. They have a way of pushing the monies around, and at the end of the day, nobody gets to see anything. But a lot goes on. behind the scene.
You
And
know
that's
what I
what really
noticed?
plays out. Eventually, that's what plays out.
Just
When you see the outcome, that's what plays out.
You know what I noticed during that convention was just right after the voting, the delegates were leaving. And I was thinking, I thought you came here to vote and at least see the outcome of your voting, but they were trooping out. And I don't know, for me, it was just...
They were trooping out to enjoy their loot.
All right, you heard that.
It's sad, really. It's sad. You know, it's sad.
It's really a couple of other stories on the front page. You see, Nigeria records 21 fresh cases of monkeypox, 1 death. It's a page 4 read, and I know that the NCDC has been given some advisory even before it became a major thing. Been advising how people should approach this.
Interestingly, I read the report yesterday. Right. I think in one of where Russia was accusing the United States that the U.S. has 3 labs in Nigeria where they probably spewed this monkeypox out. I mean, it's funny. I read that and I just laughed. I said they shouldn't bring us into this.
We're okay where we are, and we're handling it quite well, I should say, compared to what we're seeing across. So just needs to be more careful. Concerns as expatriate crew gulp 1.62 billion naira monthly flying politicians. At page 6 read, a couple of pictures on the front page, but you know what? Let's leave it there for the Guardian.
Daily Trust has following suit in terms of the lead headline there. APC presidential screening. Oyegun-led committee grills Tinubu, Umahi, Amechi, Badaru, others. Oshibajo, Lawan, Fayemi, others appear today. Atiku's emergence, not a threat to us. That's according to Bakari. Page 4 will give you details. They also have pictures to buttress it. But I'm curious, what do you think happens in the screening, though? Is it the closest we get to an interview for the presidential aspirants?
Well, the screening would appear to, it takes the semblance of some kind of interviews where the politicians themselves within the party tries to look at who best. Really, I don't think it is screening. What they simply look at is to try to aggregate the interest of the party, who best can serve the collective interest. When you get in there, get the ticket, how are you going to fix these things, arrange these individuals into various positions? That's what the screening is about, really, for me. And the individuals that emerge from the screening process eventually are those that have been able to build structures, nurture the structures, service the structure, and at the end of the day, you do not expect that somebody whose bills have been paid over the years and who finds himself as a member of the screening committee is going to move against the benefactor. That is really a key issue in Nigerian politics, the issue of godfatherism. Somebody appointed members of the screening committee who influence how are they appointed. Why don't they allow party members to elect members of the screening committee? But of course, the ESCO of the party, the national ESCO of the party, will appoint members of the screening committee. As somebody encouraged or sponsored the emergence of members of ESCOs of the political party. So if you look at it, these are the intrigues. It's an intricate web that is sometimes difficult to understand. But at the end of the day, the question that we should be asking ourselves, does this serve the overall interest of Nigerians?
Well, the party is conducting its own screening, and I imagine that if this is the closest they get to an interview, you know, is it this screening committee that should be interviewing them, or the delegates who's going to be voting for them? Yeah. I mean, I think that's. But hey, I mean, we're not privy to the questions being asked at a screening, or whether it's just to ensure that all their documents are really their documents, I don't know. You also find this very important story on the front page. Abuja Kaduna train attackers issue fresh threat as children found. Page 6 will give details. Do not forget that there had been a threat before now, a 7-day ultimatum, more or less, with demands attached to it. We did hear yesterday that that ultimatum had now been rescinded, but looks like a fresh one has come out. What do we make of these negotiations? They're taking way too long to get the people who were kidnapped on this Abuja-Kaduna train attack to be released.
Well, I'm not aware there's any negotiation. The federal government has taken a position that they will not negotiate with terrorists. The Kaduna state government under Governor El-Rufai is very clear that he was not going to have any business with terrorists. I think that is really what has kept the captives there. But if you are not negotiating, what else is the government doing? The constitution is very clear. the purpose of government is for the security and welfare of citizens. So if your citizens are held in captivity and the government is just, I think the business for the politicians now is how they can get to office in 2023. Nobody really bothers about anyone in captivity. So for me, for any Nigerian who is listening to us this morning, people should be very careful. If you find yourself in the wrong corner of any space within Nigeria, you are held by these so-called bandits.
Should we let that be? I mean, don't we have a duty to call government to its primary responsibility?
Of course we do, but do we have a government that is really listening? Do we need to remind government of its responsibilities? They pick their salaries at the end of the month from taxpayers' money. So it is a fundamental responsibility by the government to ensure that once one American citizen was taken, I think to somewhere in yes, and the U.S. arranged their special seals to pick him up right from our soil. That's the way it should be. Responsible governments and countries do that every time. But here we've gotten used to the number. Sometimes when people are kidnapped, the question is, how many are there this time? The government is even talking about reopening the Abuja-Kaduna rail track when you have not been able to secure the release of those who paid you to take them to Kaduna. So this is just the tragedy of the country, and it's sad. And I would have thought that even the politicians that are angling to take office in 2023 should be addressing the issues. And for the media, these are the issues that we should be confronting them with. How are you going to deal with the issues of security? It's not this plastic approach to it. Oh, I will deal with security, I will fix the economy. No, we need to ask deeper issues now. The specifics, what will you do? How are you going to, if people are taken hostage, how will you rescue them? These are issues. What would be your policy on hostage taking and ransom payment and all of that? These are issues that we should be interrogating.
Well, we have a number of other stories on the front page of Daily Trust. They also remind us that today is World Tobacco Day. Smoking kills 29,000 Nigerians annually. They have that on the front page. But let's leave it there for the paper.
All right, from here, we've got New Telegraph, the lead story here. PDP presidential primary, ex-NSA, to present Atiku before IBB, ascribed to a source. They got a host of writers. The first reads, Bauchi Governor Mohammed in trouble for refusing to step down. Security agencies to probe alleged Northern delegates lists manipulation. Fear heightens over possible Tinubu powerful PDP presidential aspirant alliance. Ex-VP meets Wike. Middle Belt Forum kicks against PDP's candidate. Well, this seems to point to some of the things going on behind the scenes that actually shape what we see, which unfortunately many, don't get to see a lot of those hands behind the scene, as it were. What would your impression be about this particular headline, especially when you remember, I think the former head of state has spoken about the characteristics of the kind of person who should lead this country. And remember, several persons who indicated interest to vie for that #1 position visited him. And many of them said they gave them their nod. So what will become of this one now?
Well, Chamberlain is interesting. Former military head of state, General Ibrahim Babangida, left power 1985 or thereabout. Since then, people still go to him in his Niger State castle, as it were. The man, and he has been active politically, really. If you look at what the politicians have done and the current political tempo, people visiting him and his counseling, he's been able to give some kind of recipe about what the Nigerian leader should be going forward in 2023. And nobody expects IBB not to endorse anyone. They come and they go. But I'm sure he has his preference amongst all of the individuals that are coming to him. So be that as it may, we are where we are now. We are to choose between these individuals that are coming up. Tinubu is coming up strong. Atiku has emerged as the PDP candidate. Now he's looking for a vice president, a running mate, a vice president. And of course, the APC has been playing the ostrich for a while. Now the PDP has been taking the lead. Now we wait for the APC to come out with their candidate, and then from there Nigerians can begin to ask the questions, interrogate the individuals. But what is important in all of this, whether we like it or not, 2023 is a defining moment for this country. It will not be enough for any of the candidates to just come up to tell Nigerians that I will do this, and I will do that. Nigerians will be interested in what you have done in the past, if any of them has held political office, so how they discharge those responsibilities. If there's anyone that has a corruption case hanging around him or her, I'm sure that will also be of interest to Nigerians. And how these individuals will fix the economy, create employment, deal with ASU, the perennial ASU strike, and of course, infrastructural deficit across the country. There's a whole lot of issues. Nigeria is at the precipice at the moment, and of course, the issue of the deep divide. You know, our fault line have been so deep in now.
Let me jump in, because we've still got some grounds to cover. New Telegraph usually publish this study at the bottom strip of the paper, but this time, says dancing can reduce anxiety, manage chronic pain, ascribed to a particular study. So people need to pay attention, because it's not just about politics. There's several other things going on in society which we should keep our tabs on. But speak to this one particularly. It's at the top of this nameplate here. Indians dump $1.60 billion substandard drug in Nigeria. And then we understand meeting scheduled to forestall diplomatic row. So there's several questions about this one. And by the way, let me just give you this back info, because part of the story said that this was in Nigerian market in the last 2 years, Iho.
That's worrisome. We have the border control and border management officials at the seaports, at the airports. How did these drugs get into Nigeria? That is the issue. That is it. We shouldn't be blaming the Indians. Any country that offers herself as a vulnerable entity, of course, other countries will take advantage of you. With this kind of story, this is a big story that is reported by the New Telegraph this morning. If it is found to be true, of course, beyond the diplomatic row, I also expect that heads will be rolling before the end of today. But what I've seen in this government is that heads do not roll, except it has become so intolerable. You've been pushed to the wall, perhaps. And so it is. Somebody just gets fired. But this is really sad. I can imagine that thousands of these drugs would have found its way to the Nigerian market, and eventually many Nigerians would have consumed these drugs. So are the Indians so heartless, so heartless that they'll bring substandard drugs to Nigerians? Is it that Nigerians have become experimental guinea pigs, that the Indians just felt that, well, the drugs that they don't want to waste the drugs? $1 billion, over $1 billion, according to that report. That is massive. It's huge.
Let's move on to the next
something of interest, and I think...
yes, indeed. It would make a good talking point in the near future. Perhaps we could find out from the Customs Service if it's a matter of capacity for enforcement and all of that. But it's a good story. From there, let's move on to the Nigerian Tribune this morning, and it also leads with politics. Tinubu, Amechi, Amosun, Bakari face APC screening. And it has just one rider. Adamu inaugurates Oyegun's 7-man panel amidst power tussle in party. You'll find that big story on page 5 of the Nigerian Tribune. Also, by the left-hand corner, there's a political story. Of course, one of the big talking points from yesterday, Peter Obi emerges Labour Party presidential candidate. There are a lot of activities, political activities from yesterday, one of which is what I want you to talk about, Mr. Ego. I almost scuttled PDP presidential primary. That's coming from the Rivers governor and aspirant in the PDP race, Wike. The riders provide more insight, accuses southern governors of betrayal. Atiku visits Wike, Saraki, Ayim. Now, even though following the PDP presidential primary, what we saw was a convivial atmosphere amongst the aspirants. They were all gallant in victory. But The Rivers State governor couldn't quite hide his reservation, and when he returned to Rivers, he said quite a lot about what happened, about how a southern governor betrayed him, and how southern leaders pay lip service to, the agitation for a presidency from the south, the zoning subject. What are the lessons that you think that Nigeria should be taken away from the outcome of the PDP presidential primary?
Well, for me, I sympathize with Wike this morning. He came out very strong. He is a man who tries to walk the talk. Apparently, he didn't read his fellow governors very well. The Middle Belt Forum, the Southern Governors Forum, Southeast, for all kinds of forums in the South, they all came up to say that by next year, once President Muhammadu Buhari would have finished with his 8 years term, it must be the underlining word, there must be the turn of the South to produce the next president. Wike took that for granted and started running with that message. But unknown to him, the other leaders in the South perhaps were also negotiating their own political future. Some were promised the vice presidential slots, and they fell for that. And of course, perhaps Wike didn't read deeply enough into the body languages of his fellow governors. But what played out is very clear. The North, democracy is a game of numbers. The North were able to come up with their strategy. At the last moment, the Sokoto state governor pulled the last joker, and that himself is supposed to be an ally of Wike. I remember Wike supported him so much during the Port Harcourt PDP convention, whether in terms of resources, physical support, mobilization. But at the end of the day, Tambuwal just pulled the rug. And so that is the way politics goes. There are no permanent friends, but permanent interest. It's a lesson for Wike that not all that glitters is gold. He came out strong. He discharged himself very well. He scored good numbers, the delegates. But of course, he lost it. He can also, I think the PDP should not take Wike for granted. I'm sure that is why they have visited him now. He is still capable of disrupting, the order within the political party. They do
but
take
of course, we all know what he has already said about
Wike,
that one. Just a moment,
that I know is somebody who doesn't talk
just 1 second, Mr.
Once he talks.
Yeah, we already know what he has said about that one. And just as you said, he walks his talk. The Vanguard newspaper, right quick, and he is the one on the front page of that paper. PDP ticket. Fellow Southern governors betrayed us. Ascribed to the governor of Rivers State, a host of riders right there. Beyond the pictures, under the pictures on the front page of his visit, the visit of a former vice president and presidential candidate of the PDP, Atiku Abubakar, APC primary, Tinubu, Wajuba, Badaru, Ohanenye, Bakare, Borofis screened. Find that story on page 8 of the paper this morning. Right above the nameplate, petrol subsidy could hit 6 trillion naira by year end. That's ascribed to IMF. Is that something to be wary of?
Well, I will just take the response from the last issue. Petrol subsidy has been a biting issue. As we speak in Abuja, there's fuel scarcity. You can't just drive into any of the filling stations and fill your tank. So now they are saying that it is going to hit about 6 trillion at the end of the year. That is attributable to the IMF. Well, Nigerians have said that there's no subsidy anywhere, that apparently there's a cartel within the oil and gas sector that is simply benefiting. It is all there for the government to deal with. We've elected them, let them deal with it, let them deal with the issue. Nigerians are tired of these excuses, putting our monies into a so-called abstract subsidy that nobody can put his or her hand on. It's that sad. On the APC screening, Nigerians wait to see who emerges as the APC candidate.
Yeah, well, so many other issues. Well, it definitely is very interesting. A quick one right now, just a quick.
Politicking is the major issue that we have.
Okay.
Well, we have to anchor at that point. Ayo, forgive me. I mean, there's so much we can talk about on the front page. Not forgetting Mr. and Mrs. I know. I probably will get a query for that one. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Igo Akere, former Abuja Bureau Chief, The Guardian, also Bureau Chief, This Nigerian, member, Nigerian Guild of Editors. Thank you for your thoughts on the program this morning.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's take a quick break. You've seen some of the issues, and we'll be getting right into them in a moment. Stay with us.
The national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Senator Abdullahi Adamu, makes his entrance into this hall. He is here to inaugurate a committee to screen presidential aspirants contesting for the ticket under the APC. The committee is headed by the former national chairman of the party, Chief Odigie Oyegun. The committee immediately gets down to business and receives various aspirants for screening.
Many people will take part in a race. Only one will obtain the crown. By the grace of God, we hope to obtain the crown. And like I said inside there, whoever obtains the crown, if it's me, I expect others to support me. If it's any of them, will support. This house will not be divided against itself.
It wasn't too much of an issue. I just answered that, yes, I'm for consensus, and that was it. So there was no big deal about the form, the signing of the paper, or any issue. There's no issue at all with that.
I'm not desperate. If it means, if the government has identified, if our party has identified the best alternative that will enable us to do well in the general election, I will support it.
The national leader of the party, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, walks into the screening venue to a tumultuous welcome. So far, 7 aspirants have been screened, namely Emeka Nwajuba, Nicholas Felix, Uju Ken Ohaneye, Ajayi Borofis, Ken Namani, David Umahi, and Tunde Bakare. Those awaiting screening by Monday night are Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, Ibukule Amosu, and Chibike Amechi.
Well, if you've been following the news, you must have seen it by now. And if you didn't catch it yesterday, all of the papers had stories on it this morning. The APC, that's the ruling party, has begun its presidential screening. 12 of them were reportedly screened yesterday, and some of the pictures you saw there captured in that report for you. Well, what are the implications? I mean, what exactly happens? I asked that question earlier in the paper review. And how exactly is the party going to be responding to what happened with the PDP over the weekend? They had their own presidential primaries. We'll also be discussing the aftermath of that with two gentlemen here who also happen to be lawmakers. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Elite this morning. We have with us Senator Mohammed Abba Aji, who is Professor Yemi Oshibajo's Northeast Campaign Coordinator. He's also a member of the All Progressives Congress. Senator, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And of course, Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf is a member of the PDP and has just recently clinched his party's ticket for Kogi West Senatorial District. That's correct, right? Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, sir.
Well, quite a weekend it was. We caught up with you, Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf, over the weekend, and you clearly told us that you were in support of Governor Wike of Rivers State. He didn't get your party's presidential ticket through some intrigues, horse trading, and last-minute, when I say last-minute joker, according to Mr. Kerriga. How is your party handling the rancor that could have come as a result of that?
Every politician or aspirant that contests an election should have behind his mind that there are two options. You either win or you lose. Yeah, we are not there yet as a nation, but you should join a political party based on your conviction of the ideology and what the party vision for the nation is. So I believe that the primary has been concluded. The party naturally has begun the process of healing and reconciliation. There are emotions and whatever cleavages in politics that you cannot rule out. However, what makes you a leader is your ability, in spite of what certain obvious lapses you observe, to understand that the general good and the focus of the party. I'm a Christian. Like the scripture I look very well. I say Christ endured the cross because of the glory. It's tired of you. If you look at the bigger picture, you'll be able to swallow whatever ill feelings you have. And I think that's what is ongoing.
So, you know, it's one thing for the leaders, because we're already seeing on the front pages this morning visits being made by the presidential candidate of your party. He's going round to all of the other aspirants, perhaps to thank them and also to, you know, bind wounds and, you know, make sure that there is a united front. But we couldn't help but hear the words of the governor when he returned to Rivers State yesterday. So it is one thing for the aspirants to meet themselves and see how they can move on. Does it really affect the feeling of the supporters who perhaps give their all and still feel quite maybe hard done by, or I don't know how to put it now, but how does it really have an effect on the supporters?
Definitely, definitely. The visit would naturally bring some emotions down, and time has a way of healing things like this. The principles that the aspirants, their dominant, their utterances has a way of calming down supporters. It will not be immediate. You can't just have a switch. It's not a switch. The light is on, the light is off. No, it takes a process. And I'm sure the process has begun. And we will. 2019, we had about, about 17 aspirants in Port Harcourt. And after the primaries, it's gradually Senator Bukola Saraki became the DG of the campaign. That's part of the healing process. Integrate everybody. Everybody have a sense of belonging. That's what is important.
Okay, let me come to you, Senator Abba Aji. I'm sure that your party must have been watching very closely what was transpiring over the weekend with the People's Democratic Party. You have to give them kudos that they were able to organize successfully the open secret ballot. Do you think we'll see something like that when your party's presidential primaries comes up this weekend?
Indeed. Indeed, we have watched very closely with keen interest. And you are right, we're impressed with the organization of the convention. It was well organized. It was good. It took exactly 6 hours from 6 p.m. to 12 noon. So yes, there are lessons for us from that. But more importantly, there are lessons for the Southwest from the behind the scene. You've mentioned about how Wike, lost and he wasn't expecting to lose, and Honorable has alluded to other factors. But actually what happened is behind the scene actions of northern leaders. It wasn't by accident that Tambuwal withdrew. No, Tambuwal was compelled to withdraw by northern leaders working behind the scene. Now, I want the Southwest leaders, particularly the elders and the traditional rulers and the royal fathers of the Southwest, to come to the aid of the Southwest, because now Southwest can face political annihilation, because there are 5 people there, or I should say there are 4 other people there. Everybody should come and queue behind Professor Yemi Osunbanjo, who is the person that actually has the best chance, easiest to sell, who is already a vice president, who has acted as president, who has impressed everybody, who has reached out to all delegates. I was on the campaign train with him. He didn't just go there to say, vote for me. He engaged the delegates. He will walk down to where they are, face delegate face to face, and engage them in dialogue, encourage them to ask questions about current state of affairs, about what they want to see in his presidency, and he took notes and he answered them. Right. So this endeared him to the delegates. And he has broad-based support. So unless the 4 other contestants of the Southwest are compelled by the custodians of the permanent interests of the Southwest, which is the elders and the leaders and the traditional rulers and so on, to withdraw and support. Otherwise, they can cause annihilation, political annihilation of the Southwest. This is the best chance of the Southwest to produce president. And if they continue the way they are doing, giving him problems from his own sub-region, then we will not see what the North has done. The North has looked at the contestants and they said, Atiku Abubakar was a vice president, so he is automatically in a senior position. So they asked the others to withdraw, and they did. Otherwise, the votes would have been splitted between the former vice president and Tambuwal, and Wike would have easily made it.
It's interesting. I mean, I like the fact you've gone straight to the point. I mean, straight to selling your candidate. But, you know, it's interesting that you give us at least a background view as to what played out. And you should know, because, I mean, you are in charge of the Northeast Governors Forum for some time before you resigned to pick up this that you're doing right now. But help us understand the thinking, because it's always been thought that as a gentleman agreement, even within the APC, we don't see as much northern candidates as we see southern candidates, or aspirants rather, in this presidential race. So help us understand the thinking. Is it from that side, the thinking is let everybody throw their hats in the ring, don't respect that gentlemanly agreement that says once the North has it for this time, let the South at least have the chance? Is the thinking throw it open even from the northern elders, or let's respect that gentlemanly agreement?
Well, you see, you can't run away from this. Nigeria is constituted of over 200 million people. You can't throw important position like presidency to just a random chance, you know, which is why, for example, the PDP has enshrined zoning, although it has never followed it. It has never implemented it properly. The APC, on the other hand, does not even have zoning in its constitution. But both parties, and indeed all parties, all politicians, have moral duty to carry along all parts of this country, which is why you can't have from the same state or from the same zone or from the same region president and vice president. You know, it's this art of carrying along. So PDP has had, what, 16 years? Out of it, only 2 years featured northern presidency. So it's duty bound on moral grounds, not even by their own constitution, you know, to have a presidential candidate from the north, as they did in the case of in Atiku. Similarly...
But they threw it open, actually.
Well, you see, throwing it open, without amending their constitution, you see.
Well, they decided beforehand, saying we're not
That's why I said that they
open.
have never respected it, even in the past. They have never.
You know what I find interesting? You were in the PDP.
Yeah,
you moved to
that's
the APC.
why I know.
You are in the PDP, but you seem to disagree with him regarding that zoning arrangement, saying that, well, they've never really respected it.
I disagree. 2019, it was zoned to the north in PDP. Nobody from the south contested. There's never the time we don't zone. This is the only time we have not zoned. When you say we have never we zoned, I remember I was part of the 2019 process fully. 2020, for this year, time around, we didn't zone because politics is about cleavages and interests. There were those blocks who were able to muzzle the zoning committee not to come to that conclusion. There was an attempt to zone, so it failed.
Okay.
And I want to really talk about something he said. I don't agree to regionalizing, politics in this manner, that Southwest should come together and talk to themselves. The president is going to be president of Nigeria. Market yourself to Nigerians. You should have the wherewithal to confront anyone running from other zones. What happened in the PDP primaries? Behind the same thing that we're led to, should deliberately be played down. These are the things that bring a lot of discontent and into.
But isn't that the reality of what exactly played out?
The fact is it reality, but there's something maybe in the reality doesn't make it good. We must find a way to build bridges in a manner that people are not into the ethnic cocoon. You do not make me now want to run, and I'll be looking how to manipulate, drive my zone. We must get out of that.
Right.
You've been there for too long. He has not brought us any good as a nation. So
Honorable.
deliberately, I feel we should demarcate such approach so that nobody will feel manipulated because of where he comes from.
Okay, good point then. We're turning to Lagos in a bit, but you wanted to land on that point. So you talked about PDP being duty-bound, but what is the case of the APC now?
APC is similarly duty-bound because we're almost concluding 8 years of President Buhari's administration. He's from the north, so APC is duty-bound to zone the presidency, the 2023 presidency, to the south. Yes. And then in the south, you have to look very closely and see your chances as a party. As a party, the chances of APC is more in the southwest. Look at the last presidential election. The votes that APC earned in the southwest is more than double the votes that APC earned in the southeast and south put together. Okay. So because of this, it is very important. In fact, it is almost inevitable to look only into the southwest for the presidential.
Okay, Senator, we'll need to throw this to our Lagos studio where my colleagues also have questions for you.
Yeah, Senator Aji, let me ask you, in addition to probably if you had a lot more response concerning what Honorable TJ has said, but when you speak about regions, regional elders playing a particular role, if you look at how it's being reported today, when those elders in the north met, there are those who suggest that it may not have turned out the way it was supposed to be, because now there's this report that Governor Bala Mohammed is in trouble for not agreeing to step down. And then the comments of the Rivers State governor when he says, look, he almost scuttled it, because why will the governor of Sokoto State, after having been given his 5 minutes to make whatever point or take whatever decision he was supposed to, didn't announce that he was going to step down? But when he got back to his seat, he was then called back afterwards at the point where he now decided he was going to step down. It means that he might have been thinking about it. He wasn't fully sold on that idea. So on that premise, is it usually foolproof when some of these quote-unquote decisions or the elders meet and ask them to do certain things?
Well, these are not easy tasks to do. That's why they are the duties of the elders, the political elders. Leaders normally take engage in painstaking tasks. And I agree with you, it wasn't easy to make Tambuwal to withdraw, but it was the task of the northern leaders to avoid political annihilation, because if Tambuwal had not withdrawn, he would have splitted the votes along with Atiku, and this would have given a clear victory to Wike. So looking at it, and inevitably so, from a regional point of view, because politics is about interest, so the northern leaders did what they had to do. And I'm calling on the Southwest leaders to do similarly so that they come to the aid of the vice president by asking the 4 other contestants not to cause annihilation of the Southwest, but to support Vice President Yemi Osinbajo to emerge.
All right, Honorable TJ. Now, when you say, look, people, aspirants or candidates have to market themselves to the people. Yes, we know it's about interest, but considering again the narrative out there and what the governor of Rivers also said about some South states that betrayed him as well, didn't seem to carry out what had been agreed that it should come from the South. The Southern person should fly the flag. And the decisions also, some of the news behind the scene, how some of those appeared not to, well, at least from what transpired, didn't actually subscribe to that narrative that it needed to come to the South. So one wonders, when you say it's about interest, is it politicians' personal interests or their people's interests? Because they usually tell us it's about what our people want.
Thank you, Chamberlain. The truth of the matter is that any war will tell you is about the people's interest, but most times it's about personal interest. Most times it's about personal interest. That is where we are unable to define our purpose adequately. We must come to terms with one reality that until you have a nation, you cannot have ambition. In the chaotic nature of things now, God forbid, if it goes beyond now, none of us will be thinking of being the president. We'll be thinking of how to, get the peace, restore peace in this country. And I pray we don't get there. So our leaders must come to terms with one reality, that you are privileged, you are opportune to be where you are because God's ordained it. If you understand it is God ordained it, and you must understand that you have a responsibility to define the legacy you want to leave behind. Yes, there was an agreement that it should come to South by the governors, but from day one ab initio, let's not deceive ourselves, we knew those who will not be part of it. We knew those angling for other positions because they feel that if you go this way to get me to this. However, in spite and despite those positions by Southern governors, if what happened behind the scene had not happened, Wike had a very, 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 very good chance of still clinching the ticket. So that is why I'm trying to say we must not begin to over-elevate these regional tendencies. If you get to a point that we over-elevate these regional tendencies, we might not have a country that we could call ours. So rather than by now, how many years of independence? We should be thinking of the Nigerianization in us, not where I come from, the north, south. Yes, politics is local, but what should be local, more important for me, is food on the table, is road, hospital, or what have you, should be the desire and the motivation that will make people propel towards one direction. But if we reduce it to just, what are you holding on to power for? If you hold on to power, you have not benefited your people, there's no letting you can show to your people as a result of you holding on to power. If the other man gets power and give me the basic amenities, I think I'll prefer it.
So, but Honorable TJ,
overemphasize the regional tendencies.
Who is this message for? Who are you advising now? The people or politicians? Because isn't it politicians who take advantage of our fault lines and divide us for their own interests?
I'm talking to my colleagues, the politicians.
Oh.
That's why I'm saying that most time you hear is about the people, but it is a lie.
Okay.
It's not about the people. And I feel for equity and justice, naturally, power should go to the South. But I am a Democrat. The outcome of any primary any election must be respected. That's one thing about democracy. You go and re-strategize and plan for the next time. And if I delve into what my discussion editor is saying, I do not personally feel power should go to the southwest. I feel that Obasanjo had 8 years. Vice President Obasanjo is having vice president for 8 years. I feel power should go to south, south, or southeast if we are going to be between south and north. However, the dynamics of politics might not produce that. But we must not deviate from the fact that these are obvious facts that we must keep. So that next time, it helps those regions to renegotiate. Hey, so time this happened, and so this time this happened, we didn't get. So those are the persuasion you take to the table next time you are seeking for such office.
Well, Honorable, let me keep that conversation on for just a bit before I come back to Senator. You're saying that we should, as much as possible, de-emphasize those sentiments, in this case, regional sentiments and all of that. But as Chamberlain said, and as the Senator also mentioned, that is our reality now. But going by your own interests, I mean, your own position, your thoughts about this matter, your party already zoned to a particular region of the country. So this, and there's a fence mending process that is on already. So in terms of that, how do we begin to bridge those gaps so that we can begin even from now, before the general elections, to de-emphasize the ethno sentiments that are playing out and speak to the issues that you've outlined now? Because, as you said, food on the table, money in the bank for so many people, those are the issues. But it would seem that those issues haven't played out in all of the processes we've been talking about so far.
Because of the multi-ethnic nature of the nation Nigeria, that's why our leaders came up with the idea of zoning. But the essence of zoning is to promote equity, fairness, and justice. So once the presidential aspirants have emerged, the flag bearer of the party has emerged, it's the responsibility of the party and the leadership to begin to zone other offices that will give a sense of unity and belonging to every other segment of the country. So there are other offices that count, the vice president, senate president, speaker, what have you. This will help in balancing so that no section of the country will feel left out. So these are the things that help the healing process. But however, my desire is that we'll get out of this. But the process must start earnestly. There must be a conscious effort by politicians to see that Nigeria cannot continue this way in 60 years after independence. Will it take us 200 years to learn the rope? We will have a responsibility to de-emphasize these tendencies so that those coming behind us begin to see. Unfortunately, I was a student union leader, and we de-emphasized this as a nouns. I was now SecGen, and I realized that there was a time a Gambo was president UNN. There was a time Henrika was president Ife, Adibugai. And unfortunately, at the larger political spectrum, I'm beginning to see that what NANS had achieved over 30 years ago, we are still struggling. Even the idea of rotation and what have you. NANS started rotation 1980. 1980, way back. So I think the political elders must come to terms with one thing, that, hey, we will not be here in perpetuity. We will leave. What legacy are we leaving behind? Okay. Nobody will be interested in our rhetorics. They will be interested in what we have done. The child will obviously not follow what you say. He will follow what you do.
Okay. Well, Senator Aji, let me ask you this one. You know, there are those who are out there looking at all kinds of permutations, all kinds of options open to the APC. The screening is going on now, and so many people are wondering, so what is going to come out of it? One of the issues a number of people are looking at is, historically, it would seem like the APC has always gone a particular route, consensus. Do you see that playing out this time around?
Well, consensus is one of the options that are both in the APC Constitution and in the Electoral Act. So, yes, there is statutory backing for consensus as an option. Because of the demographic diversity of our country, it is not easy to always put numbers. That's the responsibility of the leaders. Consensus building, happens in many varied ways. Even the behind the scene activities of the leaders of the North that produced Atiku Abubakar is a sort of consensus building, you see. So consensus is good, and it is one of the responsibilities of a leader to build consensus in everything that is varied, that is diverse, where interests are diverse. And in politics, you know that interests cannot be more diverse than in politics, because we're demographically diverse people, so our interests necessarily vary. So you will find that there are concentric cycles of interest, starting with national interests to regional interests, state, community, and down to personal interests. So in order to manage this diversity, consensus building is a very necessary tool. So I think APC will do very well to engage, continue to engage in consensus, something that it is very good at doing.
So, Senator Aji, if the APC does not go the way of consensus, there are still so many lessons to learn from the PDP presidential primary, and as it relates to the APC making its own decisions ahead of its own primary this weekend, even if Southwest regional leaders rally around each other, as you said, the gains will still be too few to consolidate. I say this because 2,300 delegates plus will be electing the APC presidential candidate. Out of that number, 15 states, have the most delegates. Out of 15, 7 are from the north. So even if the Southwest regional leaders rally around each other, and what happened during the PDP presidential primaries repeats itself, then it will be political annihilation for the Southwest yet again. What are your thoughts on this?
No, actually, political annihilation of the Southwest can only take place if the 4 other contestants pull down the easiest to sell contestant in the person of Professor Yemi Osinbajo. But if they rally behind him, this is a game of numbers. Every vote counts, So the votes of the Southwest, once it is splitted among 5 contestants, the damage is enormous, If you look at other regions, and take it from me as time goes on, another consensus building will begin to play behind the scene among those northern contestants, and it will not be good even for our country to have both
Senator Aji, even if
the
Southwest unites with its votes, the number of the votes coming from the North would still upturn the votes from the Southwest. That's the point. But you'll respond to this after the break. You'll have time to respond to this after the break. Stay with Sunrise Daily on Channels Television.
Heartburn and indigestion? Try Gestede. My recommendation for the past 26 years, Gestede. Reliable remedy for heartburn, indigestion, flatulence, and acidity.
You won't go shake your body. Instead, they make it calm down. It a form say sabi. You want to grow 6 packs in a day. I beg you not to pass your power. You want to show yourself,
Find it with the new Airtel data plans. Dial *141# now to get the plan that suits you. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Aisha, you don't see election posters wey full for town?
Yes, so election don't near finish.
And the people wey full the posters, now same old faces. No woman, no young person. Time don't reach when we go change this kind thing, oh. As for me, now to enter one political party so that I go join inside people when they make things happen.
Gaskia, not true. Imagine say woman and youth with sabiness we go chukum out inside government full all these election posters for town.
You dey correct. We got to arrange ourselves to lead we country.
Yes, so we gas contest inside all the positions where them they vote for.
Women and youth get plenty things to contribute to build we country. Play your part so that the life of your coming generations goes sweet weller. Hope, action, and progress for women and youth inside politics.
This message now from the Campaign for Hope, Action and Progress for Women and Young People's Inclusion for Politics and Partners.
Heartburn and indigestion? Try Gestede. My recommendation for the past 26 years, Gestede. Reliable remedy for heartburn, indigestion, flatulence, and acidity.
Governor Nyesom Wike disembarks from the aircraft to be welcomed by a queue of umbrella-carrying supporters to shield themselves from the rain. If the governor thought handshakes was all he was getting, the rousing excitement on the streets of Port Harcourt quickly dispelled that notion. Residents of all ages cheered Governor Wike, touting him a hero for what they say was a gallant fight at the just concluded PDP presidential primary, where former Vice President Atiku Abubakar emerged victorious. There's more hurrah at the government house. They say although the governor lost, the number he pulled is very encouraging for the region.
Niger Delta is happy because you spoke for them. Today, our shoulders are high. We can go anywhere and speak about Rivers people.
Your Excellency, you fought a good fight. And you did not lose. Rivers State won.
In spite of the accolades, Governor Wike cannot keep his disappointment under his cap. He first hits at the turn of events that shaped the primary.
I've never seen how people can violate procedures, guidelines. Somebody has spoken. It is at that point he was speaking that he can say, I'm withdrawing. You don't call him back. I just said, look, this our party must not be destroyed. Yeah. I would have left where I was sitting down. I said, no, this convention can go on.
He then berates his South-South counterparts, whom he believes should have stood by him when it mattered most for the region.
Shame to those who will sell out their own thing. Shame to them. You're a governor. You go to a meeting, agree on something that your people would not take the control. The same people who grant. I've never seen anything like that, man. A governor. And tomorrow is, the South is a minority. You are the one making yourself to be in a minority. And you are complaining of minority.
Governor Wike may not have won the presidential ticket, but his supporters are not dampened by the loss, but rather are encouraged by his performance, which they see as a step up in the political profile of not just Rivers State, but other minority groups in the country.
Welcome back to the program. Governor Nyesom Wike there, spitting fire, going over the events of the weekend, the PDP presidential primary to be specific, and we're reviewing those activities and looking ahead, particularly as the APC has started screening. It has screened so far 12 of its presidential aspirants and is set for its own presidential primary and convention this weekend. Our guests are Senator Abba Aji and Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf. Senator Abba Aji, we were talking earlier on. I'd like to put it in proper perspective, perhaps, so that we'll have clarity over what we're talking about. The 7 states that have the highest out of the 15 states that may provide the swing votes for the APC presidential primaries are Adamawa 63, Kebbi has 62, Borno has 81, Katsina has a whopping 102 states, and Kano has even more, 132. So even if the Southwest leaders rally around each other and, group to present one candidate, these swing votes from the north will still determine, and if the northern leaders rally around each other and provide their own strategy, as we saw in the PDP presidential primary, then the gains, as I said earlier, will be too few to consolidate. What are your thoughts?
Well, you see, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has broad-based support, mostly in the states that you have just mentioned. Very, very broad-based. So what I am saying is that his home zone, the Southwest, should not impede that by breaking the votes. You see, these votes are such that they are very sensitive to changes. One vote can make a difference, For example, if you look at the PDP one, God knows if Tambol had not stepped down, certainly the gap that is between the first and the second will not be the same, and Wike would definitely have emerged. But that is taking it to extreme. In the case of Professor Yemi Osinbajo, he has broad-based support. In the north, he has good support. We have no doubt about that. But it is important for his own zone not to break its ranks, but to rally behind him, so that, because the annihilation that I'm talking about is actually zonal, that's of the Southwest, and the others are waiting to scavenge on this annihilation. So, and I'm saying this for a reason. The Southwest leaders, they have called them before, and they held meeting with them before, and they laid 2 rules. Rule 1 has been followed very well by all contestants, and the rule 1 says, don't run down each other, and they're not running down each other. But rule 2 says, do not allow the presidency to slip out of the Southwest. Now, that is what is in danger now. And who is in danger in it? The 4 other contestants who are, challenging Yemi Osinbajo. I think the Southwest leaders need to converge one more time and do what the Northern leaders have done in the case of PDP.
Honorable Tajuddin, I imagine you would want to speak to the same issues, particularly because a member of the PDP had tried to stop your national convention, citing the voting pattern skewed in favor of the North. And he has since spoken again after the PDP presidential primary, saying the outcome is a proof of the reason he tried to stop it in the first place.
I do not know the information he has that makes him think that it was squeezed in favor of the North. I'm aware that if the South did what the North did, Southern President Kanye will have won by the delegates available. That was why I was preaching here that we must de-escalate this tendency. The day the South come together to vote in that direction, as per the number of delegates we have today, a Southern president will emerge from PDP. So they do not have that number to swing it. It's just that the South came in independently without a common front to say we are voting for whoever we feel is our choice. At the last minute, the North came from this direction. But I want to really move out of that we should move into now looking at how to rescue this nation from the quagmire we find ourselves. And unfortunately, there are not enough consciousness of those facts. I'm sorry, sir, Distinguished Senator. If you even look at the primaries now, you could see who is prepared to govern. INEC gave us time. INEC had to shift the goalposts for you to have your screening. Within the time INEC gave us, PDP did everything and made the time. Without the extension of INEC, when I see people say they are screening yesterday, we should have done convention by the guideline INEC gave us. So INEC was compelled to give another 1 week so to accommodate the lapses of the ruling party. Nobody's looking at those things.
All right, Senator, before you respond, in addition to what you may want to say to that, just let me add this to that. Is your party jittery about the emergence of Atiku Abubakar in terms of who can match him up, given what is playing out, and particularly, or more so, what Honorable TJ had referenced?
Not jittery as such, but certainly requiring strategic thinking. And yes, here's the strategic thinking. Atiku Abubakar is a politician of some repute, certainly. In the last election, if you remember, there were only 2 million votes between us and the PDP. We won by just 2 million votes. So now looking at general election, you know, the Southwest and the North Alliance will fortify the APC in the general election. But if, for example, the APC comes up with the South-South or Southeast presidential candidate, it will be very, very easy win for the PDP, you know. So the numbers, because politics is a game of numbers, you know, the Southwest cannot be ignored in this equation at all. And the North and the Southwest working together with Osunbanjo as president and a Northern Muslim vice president will be the only challenge and you know, that can defeat Atiku Abubakar.
Senator Abaji, just one more thing from me. You spoke to the consensus issue the other time, and you know that in the laws that talked about the consensus, there are certain conditions. All contestants have to write in there. They have to write that they agree that it should go in a particular way. How do you see that playing out, seeing that each of the contestants that are being screened right now by your party have what they call lifelong ambitions, especially the critical ones that you talked about?
Well, yeah, you're right. You're referring to the Electoral Act. Actually, the Electoral Act goes even a little more than, it lays two rules, both in writing. One is contestant has to withdraw in writing, and the second is contestant has to accept the consensus candidate in writing, you see. So yes, that's a tall order, and you're right. It's almost too late in the day because contestants have built support systems, they have expended energy and resources. Maybe consensus should have been engaged in much earlier than now, but still it's not too late. Consensus itself is constituted of layers. It doesn't mean, you know, all of you agree, live for this, you know. Consensus also, the most important, especially at this stage of consensus building, is the governance. The governors are the most important. The president can speak to the governors, and the governors and the presidents can agree about a candidate. And the governors, in turn, can talk to the delegates, and this where the consensus candidate can pass it, which is different from, if you remember how it played out in the emergence of the national chairman of APC, where the entire decision was made, in the villa. Now, this time it's too late for that.
And it looks like the stakes are higher this time with the presidential slot.
Indeed.
Just to put this out there, Senator Abaji, you keep saying there are 4 other aspirants in the Southwest, but there are actually 7 of them in total, so we don't disenfranchise them. So, I mean, 6 others aside your candidate, just to put it out there. So we're disenfranchising others. But you know what, speak to this, Senator Abaji. I'll come to Honorable in a moment. But we've seen the political clout that President Buhari carried around literally in elections before he eventually won. And there'll be questions as to who in the APC currently, which of the aspirants has such appeal, such political clout. I mean, it has been said that for the PDP it was easy to go the Atiku way because he has proven himself in the past. But this is a new foray for the aspirant. So really, who do you think has that much clout that you can at least take it to the bank and say, any day this person can have 14 million votes across Nigeria?
It is very, very clear that it is Professor Yemi Osinbajo.
How?
For the reasons that, one, it is the turn of the South as far as APC is concerned, for the reasons that I have explained. The South is dominantly Christian, and he's not only a Christian, but he's a pastor at that. He has no baggage. He doesn't have difficult to explain financial resources. He has the cognate experience. He has been vice president for 7 years. He has been acting president, and he has impressed everybody. And there has never been any disagreement that has been made public between him and his principal, as it played out between, if you remember, Atiku and Obasanjo. You know, he's a very God-fearing person.
But he's not been tested at the polls.
He has been tested at the polls. I mean, you can't get more tests than being elected as vice president. The only next is the president, and that's why he needs the least push to occupy the seat.
You know, Honorable TJ, I kind of share the fears which you have put forward. Do you see the non-zoning, the fact that both major political parties have thrown open their tickets? Right now, in your party, a northern candidate has it, even though he's promised to unify. In fact, one of the biggest points which he continues to throw out there is that he intends to unify the country. Senator Abba Aji has made reference to how the Southwest needs to come together. But the Southwest, when they produced the presidential candidate, never really supported the presidential candidate that was produced. I mean, former President Olusegun Obasanjo did not get the votes of the Southwest to become president. Do you fear that if we have a northern candidate on the part of the PDP and a southern candidate on the part of the APC, do you think it puts our unity in danger, given what just happened within your own political party?
No, but just raise some flag more. It will raise some flag more. And I really want to correct some impression. Nobody, no region can go it alone. President Buhari had so-called 12, 13 million votes for how many elections? Until there was a handshake to the South, he never won. No region can go it alone. We must come to this reality. You need the buy-in of the other region to become president of Nigeria. No matter how popular you are, no matter how strong you are in your base, I use President Buhari 11, 12, 13 million consistently for 3 elections. He never emerged. So with that background, we must understand that yes, these things will raise certain flag. And that's my fear, that at this time of our nationhood, we should not be overemphasizing this thing. It should not be the major reason or determinant of who emerges as president.
It is true, but given as campaign goes, I mean, yes, you have made the point that no region can go it alone, but we've seen just how an entire region felt alienated as a result of how the 2015 elections went, and we're still yet to recover from that. In fact, part of the agitations that we're facing in the 2023 elections is that the presidency should come from that region. That said, you know how dirty political campaigns get and how base they can get. When push comes to shove between the APC and the PDP, yes, there are many other candidates are coming up on other political parties, but these two parties, given their antecedents, do you fear that it could portend danger for our unity?
It's the responsibility of the leaders, their utterances, their dominion that will determine if we go to the edge. That region that felt marginalized you're talking about, I lay the blame at the doorstep from President Buhari. When he emerged, there are certain things he said at the beginning that further fueled that position. When he went to the US, there was no basis to do 95% analysis. So those things stuck with those people, and it became difficult to get out of it. So our leaders must understand that once you get to this level, there are no flippant words. Anything you say, because there are a lot of emotions attached to it. So the leaders of the two political parties must understand the fact that we must have a nation first before you can become president. So that our utterances, our position will determine that it is possible we go into flame. It is possible we're able to calm our nerves and have a nation we can begin to build together.
Senator Abba-Aji, what are your thoughts on that? Have you thought it through, especially now that both candidates? We don't know how the APC is going to swing with this, but given the fact that it's also thrown its ticket open, and you have contenders from every region, do you fear that this unity could truly become very fragile post 2023?
Well, you see, we are a very demographically diverse country, and what ensures our democracy is not just the provisions of the Constitution, but it is the acknowledgement of this diversity and the mutual suspicion of each other that we have, Going back to what the Honorable has pointed out about what President Buhari had said in America. President Buhari simply said, yes, those who voted for me will get more. Yeah. When you seek and secure votes and get elected, you have engaged in a social contract. You have made promises, and based on these promises, the voters elected you. So there's a social contract between you. And this social contract is more morally enforceable in areas where you are, elected, and you've met the requirements, the constitutional requirements of being elected. So I don't see anything wrong with the statements that President Buhari has made. And back to the Southeast again, the Southeast has engaged itself in just demanding presidency. You don't get presidency by demanding for it. You get it by negotiating, by engaging. If you remember, Abiola, SDP presidential candidate, defeated the NRC in Kano State, his own home state. How? Because of the level of engagement that Abiola had with the Kano electorates. He didn't just sit back and say, I demand that you give me. I feel that I'm excluded. And the Southeast has to change its tactics. It has to play ball. It has to appeal to people. You don't just be engaged in hate statements and demands. That's very childish,
I think we have an opportunity here, and I think what's quite instructive is that, the utterances of political leaders and leaders generally would go a long way in either tipping us over or ensuring that we're stronger as a nation. You, for example, by the way, today the screening continues and your candidate will be screened today. Yeah. The Senate president will be screened. Now, what I find interesting is you are from the Northeast, where the Senate president is from, just a neighboring Yobe state. You are from Borno State. Now, the vice president is from Southeast, and you from the Northeast. Southwest, rather. Forgive me, there's been so much Southeast, I said Southeast. And you are supporting a candidate that is from the Southwest. You're not even, in quote, supporting a candidate from your region. So I find the dynamics quite interesting. So why go for a candidate from the Southwest rather than support a candidate from your region? And I think it's an important point to perhaps make to push this conversation of unity forward.
It's not about me alone, you see. There is the majority of us in the North think that there's something called fairness, you know. And this fairness is an ingredient which, if you allow to escape from the political equation, you will not even have peace in Nigeria. You know, equity and fairness demand that you do this thing turn by turn. We are about to complete 8 years of a northern presidency. So it is a moral requirement that it goes to the south. And the majority of us, not just me, believe that this is the way to go about it. So we believe that this time, anybody who goes and purchases the form, and yes, some of them did, and one of them from my own region, sub-region, but you see, just because he has bought it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right at all. What is right is to allow the presidency, after spending 8 years in the North, to go and spend 8 years in the South. Then when you look at the South, then you look at also your chances, because you've mentioned earlier that Atiku Abubakar is not a pushover. I agree with you. So who do you take from the South? You have to take somebody that can defeat, hands down, the PDP candidate. And to do that, you need your best. And the best now is Professor Yemi Osinbajo.
I can't help but notice Honorable TJ smiling, but just quickly follow up on that one. Will your candidate be willing to go the consensus way, saying, you know what, we have thought about this and we maybe think you should go your way or otherwise? Is he open to all options?
Professor Yemi Osinbajo is a team player. He's a team player, and he's a man of God. He's very God-fearing, and he believes that power belongs to God, and he gives it to whoever. So he is quite willing to play in this consensus building, and indeed he's even part of it. You know, we have only one presidency, right, and he's the vice president, so he is part of the consensus building, certainly.
Honorable T.J. Yusuf, there are questions as to who will be the vice presidential, the running mate for Mr. Atiku Abubakar. There have been a couple of names. In fact, the name of Governor Wike came out yesterday, and I wonder, what is it thinking within the party in terms of the person, the pedigree, the temperament, and all that, such that you can capture as much votes? Because you said you can't do it alone, so you need at least the votes of other areas. So what is it thinking now currently in the party?
I think the process has begun. Leaders are meeting. There are a lot of names being branded around. But more importantly, there's who is adding value to the ticket. What are you bringing to the table in terms of vote, in terms of experience, resources, and what have you? That will determine. The party has a lot of very, very sound and qualified men who could feel that. But I want to delve into something that the Senator said about the vote of Southwest and the what have you. I'm a student of politics, and I've checked. The Southwest has never produced good vote in presidential election. Go and check the records.
They never produced what?
Good vote in presidential election.
What do you mean good? What do you mean?
When I mean good vote, there's always contestation in Southwest, so much so that what to get the difference between the political parties in Southwest has always been 2%, 3%, and what have you. And the volume of vote compared to government election is always lower in presidential election.
But some people will say that there is a reason why the Southwest is regarded as politically sophisticated.
So that is why they cannot put that kind of volume of votes. So that's what I'm trying to put that. I've gone and checked the last 6 elections. Southwest has never. In fact, South produced more votes than Southwest. So as per the number of voters in Southwest is higher than South. But turnout to election. So go and check, sir. Yeah. So now, go and check
I have the numbers.
Not for the APC, you said?
Not for the APC. South APC presidential votes were less than 500,000.
Yeah.
You know, the Southeast was just 1 million. Okay. But the Southwest is almost 3 million. So, you know, the numbers are very important.
Compared to what
if you add the Southeast and the South, and multiply by 2, still it's less than what Southwest gave to APC.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is that check the volume.
Well, I thought you were talking, I didn't realize it was referring to volume. I thought he was talking more about the margin.
No, he was talking about the volume.
I talk about the margin too. I talk about the margin, I talk about the volume.
And
the margin is always between 3-4%. There has never been a time in the South, apart from the UPN time. There's never been a time in South where you get anybody winning South.
That's a party having a landslide compared to the other party.
No, it's about 2-3-4%.
But that is a pattern that is emerging, because some people will say that as our processes become more transparent, we should be seeing a stronger contestation, you know, amongst the parties. No longer the reign of the godfathers or you know, or vote manipulation, etc.
I'm saying this, I mean, to kind of, correct an impression that you have a bubble. When people say we'll have votes here, they go Kano, that puts 2 million for one aspirant and 80,000 for the other. That's unimaginable anywhere in Nigeria. That's what I'm trying to correct. So,
do you even think it is imaginable in this 2023 elections? I mean, given what we're already seeing happening in Kano? With the emergence of the NNPP.
Kano is presently, naturally, Kano has always been like that. I grew up in Kano a bit. Kano is, to me, is a radical center of the North. You cannot cage Kano unnecessarily. You find yourself in trouble. So ANPP is a strong, very, very strong party in Kano right now. So the election might be a 3-horse race or a 2-horse race. It might be APC, ANPP. PDP might be the weaker.
It's interesting to say that anyway.
Yeah, as it is today in Kano. So I am just trying to emphasize this fact that as a nation, we must come to terms with reality. No nation come to that level of development and stability going the way we are going. We must deliberately change our approach if we want to get a different result.
Well, gentlemen, I think it's a fine place to leave it. It's been quite an interesting conversation, politics-wise, and even talking about the unity of Nigeria. I would like to thank you so much, Senator Mohammed Abba-Aji, who's Professor Yemi Osinbajo's Northeast Campaign Coordinator. He's also been a former Executive Secretary, Northeast Governors Forum, as well as other caps he's worn, as well as Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf, a member of the PDP. I'm not prophesying, am I? A member of the PDP.
That's the wrong prophecy.
And current member of the National Assembly is vying for a Senate seat. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you, sir.
I thought you said the handshake. You don't see that often. Well, that's it on this segment of the program. But we're back with another side to this conversation. Remember the talk about the third force? It actually concerns the PDP and the APC as well, but in another party. So please stay with us.
Delegates of the Labour Party arrive in the venue of the party's presidential primary election in Asaba, the Delta State capital. They find their way to the accreditation point where they are cleared. Former Governor of Anambra State, Mr. Peter Obi, who resigned from the People's Democratic Party last week, is here to slug it out with renowned economist Professor Patutomi, Faduri Joseph, and the only female aspirant, Olubusola Emmanuel Teller, just as the leadership of the Labour Party, as well as the Nigeria Labour Congress, say they welcome the alliance with Mr. Peter Obi. A few moments before the exercise began, Professor Pat Utomi and Faduri Joseph stepped down for the newcomer.
To move forward our party and to move forward this nation, I will step down from Peter Obi.
Voting now commences, and midway into the exercise, Mrs. Olubusola Emmanuel Teller also steps down. But the exercise is nullified, and after the third attempt, Mr. Obi is declared winner.
Hereby declare Peter Obi as the flag bearer of Labour Party.
He highlights what he intends to do next.
We need to rebuild here. We need to give the future generation a hope in this country. A country that is so endured with human and natural resources that have been mismanaged over the years needs a turnaround. And that is the work we just started today.
He also intends to take his campaign around the country to actualize his dream of succeeding President Muhammadu Buhari in 2023.
Welcome back. Well, yes, as you've seen there, we will be discussing the developments of Labour Party. We've got Mrs. Olufolahan Emmanuel Teller. She joins us next. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, yes, your party primaries has been concluded. You were an aspirant. You did step down for Mr. Peter Obi, who eventually emerged as the flag bearer of your party. Could you give us the background? Why did you step down for him?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. It's been so many years of preparation and very much interested in the development and industrialization of our country. Because we know that with industrialization comes jobs creation, business stimulation, and unemployment crashes. So we have been very particular about industrialization. Mr. Peter Obi's strength is in revenue generation for government. He has done it in his state when he was governor. And when we are talking of industrialization, you also need revenue. You need money to establish factories all over the country. So after due consideration, we decided that let he who can generate the revenue step in, and we will work together with him so that we can actually industrialize our country. That's why I stepped down, and also so that the third force, which is the collaboration between Labour Party and other parties, can actually succeed. So I stepped down.
At what point did you take that decision? Because it did appear as though it was not that coordinated, because they had to start the process again afterwards, and so what happened?
Yes. After interaction with him, I really appreciated he's a man of integrity. He's a man we will want to work with. He's a man who believes in Nigeria and believes in supporting products made in Nigeria. While he was governor, he bought he encouraged innocent motors. While other people were saying, oh, made in Nigeria car, made by an indigenous company, it won't succeed, it won't succeed. But he stuck his neck out and he bought innocent motors cars, and we realized that this is somebody that will promote made in Nigeria products. So at that moment, I decided to step down.
All right, you know, it does appear as though, because there are several reports making the rounds now, that did you and the other aspirants, including the flag bearer, actually do your due diligence before you decided to pitch your tent with this faction of Labour Party? Because there are reports that the late Abdul Qadir leadership, which is now under the Abure faction, is in court, that there's a matter pending in court, and so you may have hit a brick wall with this case. What do you know? What can you tell us about that? Looks as if it's, we lost her. So, yeah, so I don't know, you may have seen that report, which is making the rounds, that there might just be a little snag along the way for the Labour Party, now that they do have their flag bearer. So trying to find out from her, because remember, if she didn't step down, if Mr. Peter Obi was not in the thick of things, if he was not there for that, if he wasn't a candidate, she might have been the candidate. So one wonders, was that due diligence done? How come that is making the rounds? Were they aware of any of that? And so if they were, what is their thinking about it? Because if a matter is pending in court, it could swing either way.
You know, it's interesting that, you know, that angle is brought into the conversation now, because there are quite a number of lawyers, you know, working in the...
That's what they do.
with the Labour Party. One of them, of course, is Mr. Femi Falana, who is not unaware, of course.
Yes.
And it will be a leadership test for the presidential candidate of this faction of the party, Mr. Peter Obi, to unify all factions, bring them under one umbrella. After all, the Labour Party is the adopted party for the third force. So it will be interesting to see the developments coming up in the days ahead. And I believe Mrs. Olubusola Tella is back now. Mrs. Tella, Chamberlain was asking earlier on what the implications would be if indeed the other faction decides to go to court to contend the emergence of Peter Obi as your presidential candidate. You know, perhaps they want to present their own candidate as well.
And just as I say, there is no other faction. There is now only one Labour Party. Only one Labour Party. No other faction. So we're united. So no other faction can go to court because there is no other faction.
What's your relationship with Mr. Aburi, the leader of the faction led by late Abdul Qadir Abdul Salam?
Barrister Aburi is the national chairman of Labour Party. And I, as a member, I am loyal to Labour Party, and I am loyal to our national chairman.
Is that to say, madam, that as far as you are concerned, Callisto Okafor has no case whatsoever, because he is the one that's been blowing hot, and it says that there's a hearing, is it today or tomorrow, concerning this matter that's just been talked about?
He has no case because there's only one Labour Party. Only one Labour Party.
But
thank you. And he wasn't even a presidential aspirant. So on what basis did he go to court?
Might I ask if these people were present in Delta State during the election, your presidential primary election? Were they present? If indeed the party is united and there is only one Labour Party?
The NLC was present. TUC was present. All the presidential aspirants were present. Labour Party as Labour Party was on ground. So everybody was present.
Was Barrister Buri present?
Thank you. Oh, definitely.
All right, Madam, there are a number of issues that one would want to also take up on this matter, and we just hope, of course, all parties always have one contending issue or the other. Let's hope that Labour Party will be able to settle all of that. But look at what's playing on in the polity now, Madam. The APC is screening its own party primary presidential aspirants now. The PDP has already come up with its own presidential candidate, and there are permutations for the vice. What are the chances of the Labour Party playing a swinging role, any kind of upset to what the APC and the PDP has been doing over the years?
Thank you very much for that question. Right, Nigeria, people are very, very unhappy, very, very angry. There is a feeling of helplessness. There is a feeling of hopelessness. The APC had been in power, PDP had been in power. Yet, people's lives have not improved. Labour Party is now the only alternative, the only feasible alternative. Now, Labour Party is made up of everyone who is a worker. Labour Party is made of everyone who is a pensioner. That means he has worked before. So he's a Labour Party member. Labour Party is also for everyone who will work. So right now, people are waiting for this third force. They are waiting for alternative, and Labour Party is the alternative.
Well, I know you know that this question might have come up several times because they keep asking, they keep wondering, what is the structure that the Labour Party is going to rely on or leverage on to defeat either the ruling party or the main opposition party, the PDP?
Okay. Labour Party is in all the states, including FCT. So we have structure in all the states. Labour Party also, NLC is part of Labour Party. TUC is part of Labour Party. So all the unions are part of Labour Party. The trade unions, the road transport, everyone is part of Labour Party. So by the time, even the farmers are part of Labour Party. As long as you're a union, you're an association, you are part of Labour Party. So what we are going to do now is to make people realize that indeed they are part of Labour Party and they can actually make a change in what is happening in our country by voting for Labour Party. And that is what we will do in the next few months of campaign.
Well, in what context do you mean? Because, you know, these other parties, they've got representatives in the State Assembly, House of Assembly, Senate, governors, a lot of other people who have been in and out for several years. Can we say the same thing of Labour?
Labour, you see, that's the beauty of it. What we are going through in this country, because Labour Party has not been in power, Labour Party has not contributed to the rot that we're experiencing in this country. So that is a strength for Labour Party. We have not contributed to what is happening in Nigeria presently. So now that we are coming on board, it means that we are coming to rescue our people, to rescue our country for our generation and generations to come.
I mean, if Labour Party had that structure, the presence, as you say, why then was the former NLC president, why didn't he use that platform or stay in that platform to get to, you know, to achieve the leverage or get to where he is today, one wonders?
Okay. Initially, well, just as you said much earlier, there was some not unity in Labour Party. But now, since February or March of this year, we have all come together. We cannot continue to be in disunity while our country is going down. So we decided, let everybody come together for the sake of our country, for the sake of our generations. Let us come together and pull up our country. So those who were, those that you mentioned, they left during the time of disunity, but now there is unity. So the fight is going to begin.
So does that suggest that perhaps, or do you see Comrade Adams Oshiomhole coming back to Labour Party if they have this structure now?
If he comes back, we will welcome him. If he comes back.
All right.
Because Labour Party.
Okay. Land on that point before I come in, Mrs. Stella.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just proceed. It would seem as if the Labour Party was window dressing, waiting for the other political parties to hold their primaries, particularly amid the clamor by the IPAC for INEC to extend the deadline. If the Labour Party was confident in its aspirants, people like you, people like Professor Patu Tomi, to lead them in the mission to rescue Nigeria, why did it perhaps adopt a strategy? It seems a strategy, correct me if I'm wrong, for other politicians who fail to actualize their mission in the other political parties to approach them and present themselves, you know, to serve. Were you waiting for other politicians from other political parties to approach you as the beautiful bride ahead of the next general election?
According to INEC timetable, the political parties that were supposed to round up their primaries by June 3rd. So anything between June 3rd and now was acceptable. Okay. So when we decided to do ours on the 30th of May, we're still very much in line with INEC's timetable and INEC's directives. So we were not waiting for anyone to not succeed in his party before jumping or before coming to a party.
Just one.
If you let Mr. Peter Obi go through primary in his former party before he came. All right. So it was not a matter he did not succeed in his former party before he.
Just one more thing before we go. Would you be surprised or disappointed? I mean, this is the politics here, this part of the world, so we expect any scenario. What if one of the eventual candidates of any of the main parties, maybe the ruling party or the main opposition party, reaches out to your flag bearer and says, do you know what, recognize what you're doing and the impact that you can have. Why don't you come join us and perhaps be a vice? And then we work together, our party and your party, to deliver Nigeria. What if that happens and your candidate accepts? Would you be disappointed?
I know it cannot happen because you don't ask a king to come be a chief under you. As of today, Mr. Peter Obi, being the presidential candidate for Labour Party, is a king. So you don't ask a king to come be a chief under you. It will not happen. It cannot happen.
All right, we do thank you for your time this morning, and we wish you and your party all the best. Let's go right ahead. All right, so let's take a look at some of the comments coming through from you out there. So,
first one.
Yeah,
Law Alpha says, as far as money politics can be traced to Nigerian political process, it'll be difficult to find solutions to the problems of the nation state by the emergence of credible leadership. It shouldn't be who can win election for us alone.
And at Mosh Aloaye says the responses of an average Nigerian youth to national issues is very worrisome. It makes the future of the country difficult and uninteresting to imagine. That's how he ends it.
We decides the new level of monetization, politics, and election processes in Nigeria is alarming and dangerous for our democracy. At this rate, it is fair to conclude that we are very far from getting it right in 2023. Only voters with conscience can save us.
Well, Mark Onovaye is saying something to the effect that we will keep moving in cycles and selecting competent leaders until we get our electoral reforms right, because it is only in our nation that we see people whose occupation is politician.
What?
Well, I don't know if it's only in Nigeria, but hey, who knows?
Well, take a look at this one from Prof. Enagena. It says, 2023, it is time to build a prosperous new Nigeria that's detribalized, build a nation that must return to the ways where most Nigerians will live above party lines, return our 13 million kids back to school in an economy that creates wealth and a prosperous country.
Well, Kayode has infected me with a mischievous streak this morning. So I'm going to take this last one, which I know our producer doesn't have. It's from Bolanle Adebola, who says, Chamberlain Uso is back on Sunrise Daily now, and I've missed people shouting, Chamberlain, Chamberlain, Chamberlain.
That's a dangerous trick. That is a dangerous trick that you've been infected with. But you know what? Hey, don't try that at home. Don't.
Oh, gosh.
Thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Malpe Okun Yusuf.
I'm Kayode Okikili Malpe, really?
What a trick to be infected. Why did you get yourself infected?
Okay, what a time we've had this morning, Chamberlain. I am Bukola Samuel Webimo.
I'm Chamberlain. We'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Have a wonderful day.